As soon as a game is a hit, players start buzzing about the game having a sequel. It's a familiar sentiment for most of us, which makes it ever so painful when a game doesn't get one. So today we're discussing some of those games with our list of the top 10 video games that are overdue for a sequel. Now, we touched on a similar list to this one a few months back, but this year we've seen a whole lot of sequels and spiritual successors come out since, so we felt that it's time to visit it again. This time we'll be focusing a little bit more on newer games than old. And this time around, I've also got a special guest.
Hello, I always travel by puffs of smoke.
It's the only way to travel.
It literally is. Flu. How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Feeling great. Feeling very good. Feeling pumped for this list.
Hell yes. So today we're talking about video games that need a sequel. And there's some really good ones on this list, some unexpected ones, and some ones that, make sense and just haven't happened. Also, you guys should definitely check out one of Rebecca's channels, Life's Biggest Questions. It's got a lot of really solid content on it.
Oh, so you're quite lucky to be seeing my face right now because, I say lucky for you, because in Life's Biggest Questions it's voiceover only, so enjoy it while you can, and then enjoy the fantastic things I have to say with my mouth on that channel. I've sold it!
Alright, so definitely check that channel out after we finish this video. But let's jump into this list for now.
Coming into number 10, we have Bully. Times have changed a lot since the first Bully came out. Back then, it was released in 2006 on the PS2. The game raised a whole load of controversy for Rockstar, and parents were up in arms prior to its debut about its expected violence. It even stirred the pot about having queer content, despite that content being super ambiguous. Regardless of all of that, it was praised by critics for its narrative, its missions and its characters, and it sold over 1.5 million copies. These days there's been some leaked information that has fans jumping at the possibility of a sequel, and this is very exciting. For starters, in 2009, the musician who scored the game, Sean Lee, told the Gaming Liberty that he would be doing the soundtrack for Bully 2 in the not so distant future. In 2011, Rockstar exec Dan Houser stated that they may focus on a sequel after releasing Max Payne 3. In 2013, he stated that he had multiple concepts for the sequel. Now, the most recent rumor came in August 2017. Rumored concept art was leaked along with the concept art for Agent, another Rockstar game that has been highly anticipated but never actually made. Rockstar has made no comment on the rumored leak, but I'm here like,
Up next, number 9, Okami. Recently remastered by Capcom, Okami is an action-adventure game set in ancient Japan that uses myths, legends, and folklore to progress the narrative, with gameplay similar to The Legend of Zelda. Game director Hideaki Kayami has stated that he'd love to come back to Capcom and work on a few titles, including a true sequel for Okami. There was a sequel of sorts published in 2011 titled Okami Den for Nintendo DS, but it was made without Kiyomi, and didn't get all too great of a reception. Kiyomi was responsible for the likes of Resident Evil 2, Devil May Cry, and Bayonetta prior to separating from the publisher.
Coming into number 8, we have Never Alone. Never Alone was a beautiful 2015 puzzle platform adventure developed by Upper One Games. Now, it was all about a native Alaskan tale that was first recorded by Robert Nasruk Cleveland in his collection of stories of the Black River people. You play as Nuna and her Arctic fox companion through 8 chapters of puzzles. The game won several awards, including a BAFTA, and it did get an expansion titled Never Alone Foxtails. Now, this added new levels and expanded further on the story. Despite being raved for turning cultural heritage into a video game history, the game never got a sequel, and I think that's criminal. It was a big step forward in more mainstream videos developed by indigenous people. Now, it does actually feature accurate representations rather than post-colonial stereotypes, so I think we really need to support this, and I'd love a sequel.
In at number 7, Beyond Good and Evil. After the 2017 E3, a new trailer for the sequel to Beyond Good and Evil was shown. It was a pretty big deal. It looks sharp, and there's definitely a big enough world left over from the original for a sequel to explore. But here's the thing about Beyond Good and Evil. A sequel has been in the works since 2008. The game has been in a constant development hell, and while it seems to be moving forward more progressively this year, hopes for a sequel are still pretty shady. If history has shown us anything about E3, it's that not all titles that are presented there are necessarily ones that get made. Here's hoping Beyond Good and Evil 2 isn't one of those titles.
Coming into number 6, we have Saints Row. Now, we haven't seen a Saints Row game since 2015's Gat Out of Hell, which was technically sort of an expansion. It was super enjoyable to play, so I'm here for it. While the franchise is often deemed as a rip-off of Grand Theft Auto, it is also unique in many ways, with the bulk of the franchise focusing on the story of a gang called the 3rd Street Saints. In In the main story, we last left off with the gang fighting off against an evil alien invasion. A little wild, yeah, but kind of fitting for the series. What we would love to see is a sequel that took the series in a new direction, or perhaps even revamped it altogether.
Up next at number 5, Shadow of the Colossus. There have been spiritual successors to Shadow of the Colossus, and even a remastered version of the game released last year. But what about a full-blown sequel? By the end of the first game, we were left with Wander gone, and the mysterious appearance of a horned baby boy. Many see that as having some potential in terms of a new narrative. According to rumors though, developers are currently moving forward with what some speculate to be a follow-up to Shadow of the Colossus. A piece of artwork surfaced featuring a lone female who many fans think may be Mono, the girl that you have to save in the first game. Hopes are high that we'll get to learn more about this mystery project at this year's E3 in June.
Coming into number 4, we have Valiant Hearts. Developed and released by our mates Ubisoft, Valiant Hearts: The Great War was a critically acclaimed game released back in 2014. Now it won a slew of awards. Playing as multiple different characters in 4 different chapters, you navigate World War I, solving puzzles, completing stealth missions, and surviving gunfire, all woven into heart-wrenching, intertwined stories about the tragedy and resilience of those who endured it. Fans of the game hoped for a sequel after seeing the post-credit scenes of one of the characters, Freddy, on a dock in front of a World War II battleship. The game's director left Ubisoft after a 14-year career with them back in 2015, so maybe a sequel might not happen, but maybe it will. I really hope so.
In at number 3, Limbo. Most fans of Limbo would argue that it doesn't need a sequel, but it needs a spiritual successor. To which some of you may say, well, the developers made Inside, which, yeah, was a great game, but it just wasn't the same. Limbo followed a young boy traveling through what many perceive as purgatory to find his sister. It's a puzzle game that requires you to survive various vicious threats, and by the end of the game, spoilers, it's really questionable whether or not the protagonist is reunited, or as some theories suggest, if the two characters are even aware that they're even dead. Luckily, it turns out that Limbo's developers, Playdead, announced on Twitter that they had another game in the works, despite the recent departure of one of the company's co-founders. Here's hoping it's a lot more like Limbo.
Coming into number 2, we have Dino Crisis. I love me a dinosaur, although I don't love me a crisis, so I feel very conflicted. Dino Crisis was a fairly big franchise back in the days of PS2. It's been about 15 years since we last saw a Dino Crisis game. It is one of the only popular game franchises on Capcom's roster that has yet to be remastered. The series focuses on multiple characters surviving through outbreaks of deadly dinosaurs and other monsters within various locations. It's a bit like Jurassic Park, but without a theme park. A sequel may actually be in the works though. Recently on Twitter, Capcom teased the possibility of a sequel when a fan tweeted to them inquiring about it. They responded with, "If a lot of people wish," with a smile emoji. Whether this means a new game or just a remastered one is still unknown, but it had a lot of people really excited.
And lastly, in our number 1 spot, LA Noire. Still topping our choice for the number 1 game that needs a sequel, LA Noire was one of Rockstar's more inventive games that was really onto something. By today's standards, some of the game's groundbreaking features may be a tad rigid or laughable.
What exactly did you see them take?
They was working on the tires. That's all that was took.
But at the time, the neo-noir detective action-adventure game made headlines for being incredibly innovative. It used company depth analysis's newly developed technology, Motion Scan, which used 32 cameras to capture an actor's facial expressions. The game featured an interrogation mechanic where you'd have to solve crimes by interrogating witnesses and suspects, all while traversing through 5 divisions of the LAPD in 1947. The game was recently remastered, but rumors of a sequel have been kicking around since 2011. In 2012, Rockstar Games answered a fan's question stating that they are considering what the future may hold for LA Noire as a series, and added that they don't always rush to make sequels. Lastly, in 2013, the chief operating officer of Take-Two Interactive hinted that there were numerous unannounced titles in development, and that the LA Noire franchise was important to the company. Alright, there we have it, friends. What do you think about these games? Do you think they should all get sequels?
Maybe not all of them, but like Dino Crisis for sure, because I am all about a dinosaur.
Dinosaurs are like the best things ever.
What was your favorite dinosaur?
Oh god, okay, so I really like T-Rexes,
obviously,
but I have a special spot in my heart for long necks.
Oh, you like a long neck, do you? I like a Stegosaurus.
Oh, good choice, good choice.
Good name, good dinosaur,
and
basically.
Triceratops too, like.
They're all pretty dope.
Yeah.
Dinosaurs, if you're watching, I'm here for you.
You know what channel sometimes talks about dinosaurs?
Oh, my channel, Life's Biggest Questions.
Full
circle, you couldn't make it up, except we are. And I hope to see you there. Once again, you won't be seeing my face, which I know is very sad, but you will be hearing some of the interesting things I have to say.
Lots of interesting stuff. Definitely go over to that channel, subscribe right now, watch a bunch of videos, and also take a look at our other videos too. See some more gaming stuff. We've got lots of great ones that you guys should definitely check out. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Kelly.
Catch you on the next one.